There are some basic rules which were already mentioned for pawn endings, but there are some exceptions, and let's quickly run through some of the exceptions. Here is the position of one of the exceptions. White king is partially already penetrated to black's position. Black has absolutely no way to stop white from advancing towards the c pawn. So the way it may work, even if they go a5, white goes king f6 and king f5, waits until the king moves, then can go king e5, eventually they're going to go king d5 and king d6, and they're going to win a pawn and win the game. So, but is this position lost for black? No, it's not. Here is the exception. White is all penetrated, white is going to win a pawn, but position is drawn. What black has to do, all they have to do to lose the game is to go a5. After black plays a5, they are totally lost. The secret is to keep the pawn on a6. Then black goes simply king c6, king e5, king b6, king d5, and here is the idea of defense, king to a5. And you see, if white plays king to c5, this is a stalemate and it's a draw. So this is a drawing position because of unusual stalemate setup for black. Pawn on a6 and king on a5. This is a draw. Now, one of the main principles in pawn ending, one of them, we already mentioned most of them, it's good to have protected pass pawn. Here is the example. We just saw it earlier in this chapter. White has protected pass pawn. Therefore, white is winning easily because the outside pass pawn is not going to work. When is outside pass pawn working? To deflect your opponent's king, which black can do, but then the idea is to come in with the king and take your opponent's pawn. Black can never play king f5 because of f7. So white is going to come pick up this pawn and win the game easily. Protected pass pawn is a huge commodity in almost in any ending, but in pawn endgame it's almost decisive. Here is the position. Protected pass pawn, extra pawn for white, protected pass pawn, and it's easy win no matter where the kings are. White goes king e3, king e5, king d3. Eventually, after king d5, white goes king c3. Now they're going to come around, and you see that black cannot play king c5 because after g6, king, as I already mentioned, the rule of the square, king is not in the square. Here is the square. g6, g8, e8, e6, and black loses. So black has to come back, and then king penetrates. White is going to penetrate with the king, and eventually they're going to win the game. But remember, there is a trick. After king g7, this is winning for white, of course. But remember, don't make a terrible move g6, because after king h6, it's a draw. Now king f6, stalemate. So the way white wins is king e6, king g6. Now we go king to d6. And after king g7, white regains the opposition. King g6. Not king e6. King g6, king f8. And eventually white wins all black pawns and wins the game. So where is the exception? If we take this position and push whole position one square down, here we have position that is a draw. White has extra pawn, protected pass pawn, looks like everything we need to win the game, but position is a draw. King f6, king f4, king g7. Black has to go back and forth with the king. White will never make a progress. The difference between this position and position we just saw with one square up is because white has additional resource of coming from behind and winning the pawn. So if black goes king g6, king f8. Now imagine the same position here, and there is no behind, there is no square, because this is the last rank. White can never get to the f file. Well, actually, black may even invite white to go to f file, but then it's going to be stalemate and it's a draw. So in this position, if black goes simply back and goes king h8, g8, there is no way for black to make any progress. It's a draw. So now those are two very interesting positions that are drawn. Sometimes you see the position where one side has extra pawn, protected pass pawn, but again, it's a draw. Here is the one of them. Here is one position I can give you where one side has almost everything they need, but they cannot win. White has an extra pawn, but black goes king b6 and king b7. What can white do? They can do nothing. To make case even worse, even more interesting, I can put the pawn on c5. Now white has two protected pass pawns. It's still a draw, because the rule is this: those two pawns by themselves, they can never win, and white king has no way of crossing the border, crossing the fourth rank. So king e3, king b6, and black goes back and forth, and it's a standoff. So position is dead drawn. So this is an interesting, but we have to have rules. We have to obey rules. We have to play by the basic rules of pawn ending. But when you see the exception, there are a number of exceptions. Exceptions, that's why they call them exceptions, that they are very rare. You can hardly see position happen in a game that you have an extra pawn and you have protected pass pawn and you can't win and it's drawn. It may happen once or twice in your whole lifetime. So, but however, they can happen. That's why we have our own brain and apply it to certain positions. And basically what we do, we know the basic rule, obey them, follow them, and also keep an eye on some exceptions. That's the way to play pawn ending, and that's the way to perfecting them. That will be the end of the lecture on pawn endings.